Hello guys! Welcome everyone, and for those who have been around for a while, back to yet again an episode of Mando-Monday. This is the series where you guys ask the questions and I, of course, answer them. That could be to do with anything related to Counter-Strike 2, Valve, future upcoming updates, or possible titles such as Deadlock, CS2's first operation, Battle Pass, or maybe it's about the background or myself. If you guys have a question you want a shot at being answered in next week's video, leave it down below of this comment section or any other one of my videos or possible posts. Today's video, we're going to discuss Valve's new priority and what that means for Counter-Strike, look into further detail for Valve's future content updates for the game, but also my channel. We're going to deep dive into why Valve would be and is right now so hesitant to bring games back such as CSGO, how to fix CS2 alongside a bunch more. Now today's video sponsor is SkinsMonkey. SkinsMonkey is a buying but most notably trading marketplace for all your Counter-Strike needs. SkinsMonkey offers a wide variety of skins. Once you find the item you want, hit trade for either items you currently have or for one of many deposit options. You can use my code MANDO for up to a free $5 alongside a 35% deposit bonus, and with their large selection of skins, SkinsMonkey also offers daily, weekly, and monthly giveaways. If interested, the link will be in the description down below. Now very quickly before we hop into the questions for today's episode of Mando-Monday is a quick PSA from myself about the future of content inside Counter-Strike 2, Valve's new developments alongside my content going forward. Now where all this has stemmed from is just myself essentially playing Deadlock over the last couple of days. I first got access a couple of weeks ago but didn't really give it a fair shot until really this last weekend, and I gotta say the game is absolutely amazing, especially for only being in an alpha state. My only wish, and this is where it made me really think, is I only wish that CS2 had this much effort put inside of it, which obviously made me think about this PSA, but also some future videos for later this week. For those who haven't really tried out Deadlock, I suggest you do. Yes, it is similar to Dota and maybe League, maybe some Overwatch thrown in there, but it's really just a completely different game overall. I'm not a huge MOBA fan, but this is completely different. And getting to the meat and potatoes is Deadlock as a whole is really where the devs, in my opinion right now, were showing where their love shines for game creation, their priorities, and new developments. That being for Deadlock, not Counter-Strike 2, or really any other title maybe beside Half Life 3. Deadlock, like we just mentioned, is only in an alpha state of the game where not even everyone has access to it. It's raking in over 100,000 players a day. It seems to be almost as polished, if not more polished than CS2 was when it first released, let alone any other modern day game that releases in a full state. Now the devs have gone as far to make their own Discord, which is great. Imagine CS2 had that when it came out, or maybe even the limited test. Yeah, that probably wouldn't have happened, which it obviously didn't. Devs have stated that a working anti-cheat will most likely release with the game on launch, and yeah, the point I'm trying to make is the game feels more polished than any modern day game that releases with a full release. Now deep diving into my content and where I want to take my channel within the next couple of weeks is I'd like to try a couple of videos just for Deadlock on my channel to see how they do, see how you guys react to them, but for the most part I'm just still going to be covering Counter-Strike because at the end of the day I still love Counter-Strike. It's my pride and joy, it's my baby. But honestly, Deadlock is just such a weird game where at first I thought it was complete junk. I thought there was way too much going on everyone's screen, but after playing it and giving it a fair shot, I really thought it was just the opposite. It's the most fun I've had in gaming since CS2 first released, and maybe even before that. Now sorry for the rant, sorry for rambling. Let me know what you guys think down below of Deadlock. Have you given it a fair shot? Now heading on into our first question for this week's episode of Mando-Mondays in regards to CS2's map pool, and this person asks, do you think Agency will ever make a comeback? Now firstly, I want to say good question, but also great choice of map. For those who don't know, this was my favorite map in all of CSGO's history. I was a part of that small community, what it feels like anyway, in CSGO that played this map pretty much on a day-to-day basis. Also at one point I wanted to see this played in the competitive map pool, and maybe even one day at the major. Imagine Agency, a hostage map, being played on the major main stage for maybe a grand final. That would really change things up and make things feel a whole lot more refreshing, or would it? Now for those who don't know, Agency was first introduced to CSGO back in 2015 with Operation Bloodhound. It was a hostage map, so it wasn't the regular bomb defusal map, and like most maps when they first release, people play them once, and if the first impressions are bad, they don't really ever touch it again. But unlike most Operation maps, it was a part of that small group like Season, Zoo, and even Cash, where it actually overstayed its welcome. And over time, it started to get a pretty big fan base, and I was included in that. Now for how the map played, you'd have to go back and play CSGO or have it be ported to CS2 to really figure that out. But it was pretty fun. It was also very T-sided, like most hostage maps. And then of course, deep diving into your question if Agency will ever return to Counter-Strike 2 on the Source 2 engine, a quick answer to this is we don't really know, but most likely no, at least right now. Now I know that's not the answer everyone wants to hear, especially the people who enjoyed Agency, including myself, but this was just one of those maps that wasn't officially bought out by CSGO or Valve, where they buy it, put it in the competitive map pool, or just own it, similar to how Valve bought recently Tuscan and Anubis. Well, it's kind of recently, it was in the last couple of years, put Anubis into the competitive map pool, took Tuscan out of the game entirely, where it's not even in CS2, but they just bought it, and how it would even get ported to CS2 is someone would have to make it on the workshop, similar to how FM Phone right now on Twitter is remaking Cash. So yeah, someone would have to remake the map on the Source 2 engine for Counter-Strike 2, optimize it, fix all the bugs, then have Valve buy it out, fix and add whatever they want to the map, to release it inside the game, and we don't know for how long it would be in the game for, if it would release with an operation, maybe an MVP style update. We really don't know. And very quickly going back to this community post from October of 2023 for Counter-Strike 2 right before it released, this is titled "Where is Agency?" And this person said, "Valve said you only have 7 maps to play and you will like it." And that's really how Counter-Strike 2 still is almost a year later, aside from the couple of community maps that they added in, and that's practically a wrap. Now our second question up here for today's video is from Ripstar CS, and he says, "What are your thoughts on VACnet 3 and the recent false bans it's handing out?" Now for those of you who have been living under a rock for the last couple of months inside Counter-Strike 2, one, I don't really blame you because there's really been nothing going on. But number two, VACnet 3 released where it skipped VACnet 2, where we didn't even really realize it was VACnet 2, at least most people didn't. But anyway, that released with some new problems like anything else inside Counter-Strike, and as of recently, it's been handing out false bans. And what I mean by that, to go into further detail, it's handing out false bans to innocent players and not cheaters. Where I believe VACnet 3 released during, before, or after that sidestepping skill update where Valve essentially banned all third-party remotes, keyboards such as snap tapping, null binds, and pretty much anything that helps you inside Counter-Strike that's not you with your 2 hands playing the game. At first, it was VAC banning people in a false manner where people were using a Razer keyboard where it was plugged in. Maybe they did or didn't have snap taps enabled, and for some, they didn't even have a Razer keyboard where snap taps were on their PC and they were still getting banned. Now, for most people, I'd like to say for the most part are unbanned, but dating back to CS2's limited test, this is still a pretty big problem, where for whatever reason, the new VAC system, VAC Live, has been VAC banning players in a false manner, either for spinning too fast with a too high of DPI where it thinks they're spin botting, lag switching, having too good of movement or too good of aim to the point where the game thinks you're cheating, and the list goes on, including VACnet 3 false banning players. And I really think that's just a continuation of what we had prior. Now, the best things you can do is reach out to Valve on practically every single social media platform, send some emails in, also send them some support tickets. But from what I've heard from other players in the community and people who have been falsely banned, it's not best to spam them with tickets. And for you getting an answer very quickly on Steam support, I wouldn't really count on it, because within this last year, Valve and specifically CS devs have essentially created cheaters inside Counter-Strike, their own little matchmaking service where they have different cooldowns, and once you hit a certain cooldown, you could possibly get a ban, and that's pretty much because Valve doesn't want to make a better anti-cheat. There's too many cheaters versus Steam staff to look over all the cases of all the people cheating. So yeah, the entire thing is a complete gong show. I hope it gets resolved and fixed very soon, but like we mentioned earlier, this has been dating back to the limited test where it's been a pretty big problem and no one's really talking about it. Let me know what you guys think down below. Our third question up here for today's video is from Voke, and he says, "Why are they, I'm assuming you mean Valve, are so hesitant just to bring back CSGO?" But first of all, great question, but this is also something I never really would have imagined heading into Source 2 or Counter-Strike 2, thinking back just a few years ago, because most people wanted CSGO gone and the new Counter-Strike just to be here and taking over everything. And I'm not saying I'm innocent. In fact, I'm very guilty of this because I wanted the next Counter-Strike to come out because I wanted to see what it was going to look like. I wanted to see how it was going to play. But I don't really think anyone or a certain group of players Counter-Strike 2 is going to be the way it is right now, almost a year later, after its initial release in a limited test, as well as the fact that CS devs rake in over $70 million with a quote-unquote bad month just for cases alone. But that's besides the point. Now, actually answering your question of why Valve just won't bring back CSGO isn't really much to explain aside from the fact that Valve just wants to move on and move into Counter-Strike 2 and only CS2. CSGO is something from the past that you can still play with the CSGO Legacy version, which obviously does suck. You can still play some matches and servers here and there based off of some new clients, but for the most part, CSGO, where we once had it a year ago with 1 million players online, is gone forever. And CSGO is out with the old and CS2 is in with the new. Valve doesn't want to bring back CSGO just because it would affect CS2 numbers, I would say in a pretty drastic measure. Valve devs would also split the CS community like they did with CS 1.6 to CS Source. And I mean, it's very true. Who in their right mind would like CS2 over what we had in CSGO? It's a decade worth of bug fixes, updates, and content. Maybe not the anti-cheat because that's not here in CS2 either, but we're pretty much missing everything that CSGO had inside CS2 almost a year and a half after its first release. So yeah, CS devs don't really want the community split, and Valve can't really make money anymore off of CSGO, which is just probably a huge reason why CSGO is no longer online. Let me know what you guys think down below. Now, our fourth question / statement is up here from Skay, and they ask, if Valve hired more employees like Fortnite do, we would have a new operation every 3 months and all the content back from CSGO in 1 week. Now, I gotta say that's a pretty bold statement, and I have not really heard anything like that before inside CS2 or just Counter-Strike in general. Now, if Valve hired the same amount of employees like Epic Games that Fortnite has, would we have an operation every 3 months? Most likely not, but the game would probably never be stale. For us getting all the content back in CSGO that we once had, yes, that would also be there, but because it's also on the Source 2 engine, there's not too many people that know how to code on it. Yes, even a year and a half later after CS2's release, and the fact that the Source 2 engine's been out for a very long time. But in this hypothetical scenario, if we got an operation every 3 months, the game would lose its touch. Counter-Strike overall would lose its charm. People wouldn't enjoy it as much, but I definitely say and agree with you that the game would be in a much better state than it is right now and has been over this last year. You see, in my opinion, what makes Counter-Strike so unique and special is sometimes the lack of content that we get, and no, I don't mean that with any sort of sarcasm. Dating back to CSGO, after we didn't receive an operation for a little over a year, going from Operation Hydra to Operation Shattered Web was a very big difference. Shattered Web, Broken Fang, and Riptide came in with a boatload of brand new features, a brand new innovative battle pass, alongside some co-op missions here and there. But that's the point, is innovation. And I think where many Counter-Strike players have their fear is this big gap between content, such as operations from CSGO to CS2, where it's been well over 1,000 days, and people are worried that Valve has lost their touch. It's going to be a rehash from CSGO, or it's going to be complete garbage where there's a boatload of bugs where it's going to take away the fun. And I'll also say, as always, let Valve cook, but also going back to your question is, you're not really wrong. Where if Valve devs did hire more people, the game would probably be in a better state with more content, especially with all the features, maps, and modes from CSGO. But I also will say Valve is like the Harvard of video games, where they only hire the best. And of course, our last question up here for today's video is in regards to CS2's hit reg. This person asks, I wonder how they can fix hit reg and can they improve SUBTICK? Now the simple answer to both of these is yes, they can fix the hit reg, but also they can improve SUBTICK, but also of course it wouldn't be Counter-Strike or Valve if there wasn't a more complicated answer. Now to quickly deep dive into the first part of your question for if Valve can fix hit reg, the simple answer to this is yes, and in fact we can date back all the way back to CSGO in 2015 or 16 to look at the major hit registration update back then, and it did wonders for Counter-Strike at the time, and even nowadays I'd say it did a pretty good job. Really, before this update, there were clips and montages still to this day that gain millions of views every single year of everyday players, pro players, YouTubers, dinking someone in the head with an M4, hitting someone's leg and it doing 99 damage because it classifies it as a dink. Your bullets in the game on everybody's screen is going into something, but in the server it doesn't register it at all. You can name it, it was broken. And Valve fixed that. But the thing was, is it took around 3 to 4 years after CSGO was out to have that happen. Now, if the same thing will happen with CS2, I'm not really sure, because there's a lot of differences this time around with 10 times the player count, 10 times the income every month they earn, but that obviously doesn't really seem to mean anything to them. As well as this now goes into the SUBTICK part of your question, where this just makes things more and more complicated. Now to look into SUBTICK, like I've mentioned before, this might be a video on its own, but the battle between 64 and 128 tick has always been there, and Valve ended up going with SUBTICK, which is essentially just 64 tick hard-coded into CS2. They found after various different tests they did that 64 tick was definitely the most cost-effective, but also in the long run just more worth it than 128. And in some ways I definitely do agree with that. Now this is going a little off track, but if you look at games like Valorant, for example, who have servers that are 128 tick, they're not always the best and the connection is usually terrible. But it's also part of the reason why I'm assuming Valve didn't upgrade the servers. Now going back to your question for if Valve can improve SUBTICK, the answer is yes, but all you're really asking is if Valve can improve 64 tick, because that's what really SUBTICK is. SUBTICK is just pretty much 64 tick, but it's just a bunch of layers, different blankets on 64 tick, if that makes any sort of sense. But obviously because it's hard-coded into the game, it's going to take a lot more time, a lot more resources, and a lot more testing, because one update could probably break the entire game. But at the end of the day, yes, hit registration is going to be improved, and SUBTICK is also going to be better, but it's just going to take some time, but it's also going to be a trial and error process over the next couple of years to see what works and what also doesn't. Now with that all being said, that practically wraps up today's episode of Mando-Monday. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you guys have a question you want a shot at being answered in next week's video, leave it down below, and tell me what you guys think about Deadlock down below. Have you gotten access? Are you enjoying it? And would you like to see content on such game? I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay positive, sexy. I'm out, guys. Peace.